Hey, you filthy animals, fuckers, savages, heartbreakers, gunslingers, Second Amendment fans, lunatic fringe folks, right-wingers, and your errant lefty who may come along to get their head set straight. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Greg Medford Show. I'm Greg, your host from Phoenix, Arizona. We have a guest in today, as I've been talking about for the last several months. This three-legged milk stool of America, the people. We're relinquishing a little bit to the ruling class so they can kind of get it all done and make some battleships for us. And then another group supposed to be the free and independent press, supposed to speak truth to power. And as that establishment has lost its way and become non-functioning, there have been folks who stepped up. And there's citizen folks like me doing it, and there's other guys doing it independently. We've got AWR Hawkins in today from Brietbart News. Now, do you work for Brietbart directly, or are you an independent who slings for them?
No, I work directly for Brietbart.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. Thanks for coming in today. Appreciate you being here.
Good to be with you.
Got a tour through the factory, and you don't live far, actually, so that was freakishly convenient.
Right, and freakishly awesome. I mean, your knives are remarkable. The made in America from start to finish, the quality, I mean, absolutely incredible. Blew me away.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure having you in. I've been doing this about 10 years, and we finally shifted over to this more formal podcast format. I've basically been railing on the infringement of rights. I've been railing on our states for relinquishing to the federal government. I've been railing on the federal government. Right. I've been railing on the politicians. I've been railing on fake right-wingers. I've been railing on left-wingers. I've been railing on China. And I feel like everybody's starting to come around the last couple of years, because Trump came along and spoke my language.
Right.
In many ways, he was a bit of he was a little clumsy in a few other ways. But I love the guy. Talk to me about... tell us a little bit about your background that kind of got you into writing as a profession.
Right. Well, I did a master's in American history with a focus on Civil War navies, and then after that.
So you must have been titillated when that submarine thing popped up a few years back, and they started pulling it out of the river.
Well, we did a lot of studying on those subs, and then I did even more when I did my PhD. I did. PhD with a focus on Vietnam War, U.S. Navy since inception, and the wars during the 1800s, and also early modern Europe. But just when you're going through all that, I had a little trouble because this is ironic. I went to school to get a military history, a PhD in military history, and I would get in trouble for defending the military. I get in trouble for defending America. And
because at the college level, they're still all liberals in the.
Yeah, liberal. We have a professor, for example, our professor introduced our troops as baby killers. Talking about Vietnam, whatever. It's such an old and untested statement. And I raised my hand. She called me.
Okay, wait a minute. Where was that at?
Texas Tech.
Now, if that can happen in Texas, Jesus, it's happening everywhere.
Now, when I was at Texas Tech, USA Today did a poll and found that Lubbock was the second most conservative city in America at that time, but their humanities department was the second most liberal, and so history's tucked into that.
Right.
But they're baby killers. And I raised my hand and I said, now, what would you do if the Viet Cong sent a kid to your front door or to your brother's front door? When he opened it, they handed him a package and it blew up. And she just sat there. And I go, now, wait, what if now they go to your other brother and they do that? Now, wait. They go to the gas station attendant and they do that. I just kept listening. Finally, I go, now they send a baby to your house. I go, do you open the door and greet him or do you open the door and shoot? She goes, well, by that point, I probably shoot. And I go, so quit calling our soldiers baby killers, because this was a strategy of the Viet Cong.
Right.
It was guerrilla warfare.
Right.
And
she can learn.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that I had a rough time through that. They tried to be sure that I didn't succeed. And I had a man, James Reckner, PhD, came up alongside me, and I'll never forget, he put his hand under my arm in the hallway one day. He goes, Hawkins, I got you. And he shifted me from what I was studying. He was the head of Cold War studies at Texas Tech. He shifted me to where my studies were on the things I mentioned. He shifted me to Vietnam, to the U.S. Navy since inception, to those wars of the 1800s. He goes, we're going to do this. And we did it. And while that was happening, he goes, now you need to start writing. And I said, these other professors have kind of made clear if I write, I could face, they're going to do all they can to keep those from getting published. He goes, nah. He goes, they fear me more than they hate you. That was his statement. And I began writing and formed that habit, and then got out, taught in the university a couple of years, wanted to jump out of a window because it was the same experience as education had been. I couldn't get any upward mobility because of my views. And I was fortunate to meet Donald Rumsfeld. He asked me to come visit him because of a piece I'd written defending his heightened interrogation techniques. Mm-hmm. He reached out to me, said, that was incredible. Come see me in D.C. So I went and saw him in D.C. He helped open some doors for me. And then a very popular talk show host reached out to me, and I immediately followed up with him. And he reached out to Brietbart. And in 2010, I started writing for him. And that's where it's been.
Okay. All right. Did you interact a lot with Bannon?
I sure did. Yeah, Bannon for the first, let's guess now, 2012 to 2016, Bannon was the guy that I interacted with. And, great. Bannon is, he's a supercharged human. And by that, I mean, it's always go time. When you're around him, he's walking around, he's looking at his phone, not looking at his phone because he's distracted, constantly reading, pouring more and more into his head. And he taught me a lot of things. So,
okay. Here's give us an idea, because we saw the institutional takedown of the last presidency, and we saw them taking down everyone around him as best they could. I've never seen anything like it. The amazing thing about Donald Rumsfeld, it's always I forget who had said you can judge a man by his enemies. Do you remember who said that?
No, I do not.
God damn, it's a great phrase, though. And I think about it, you could judge the Donald Trump presidency by the enemies.
Right.
And it's deep and long.
Right.
The bench is hardy.
Right.
He went after everything that pisses us off.
Right.
And maybe he needed maybe overall a bigger lesson in some tactics for dealing with a big army when you're the 300. He was the 300 going against the army, right? It was the Spartans, right?
Right.
He could have taken some classic lessons from Thermopylae, maybe, right? And I think about watching, everything about him was amazing because you got to see who was against him.
Right.
And they had to take off their sheep's clothing.
Right.
And there's a bunch of goddamn wolves chewing away at the soul of our country.
Right. Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about, as they went after Bannon, obviously, double barrel shotgun, and then somehow or another turned it into he had some scam going at the border, and there's an investigation, and he's like, screw you guys, bring it on, I'm ready to fight. I like that about him. But what's your personal, the guy that, you worked for him basically, and it sounds like maybe he mentored you a little bit through the process, maybe?
Well, I'll just say what Bannon taught me is, you don't allow yourself to be pressured into apologizing when you haven't done anything for which to apologize. No matter how many people line up, you do not apologize.
If you haven't
done.
Right. Mea culpa is only when necessary.
An example I'll give you, I wrote a piece after Sandy Hook on Obama's opposition to armed guards or armed teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a source, and the source talked to me about the school where Obama's kids attended school. And the source told me how...
And they got armed guards everywhere, right?
Yeah, but the source also told me where they kept firearms in case of emergency, so you could always be close if you needed to one. Well, I wrote that, and Brietbart got a lot of calls and pressure to take that piece down. And in the middle of all that pressure, and I'm feeling that pressure, and I'm only 2 years into Brietbart at this point, and very short stint with Steve Bannon at this point. Well, I get a call from Bannon, And I was very nervous. I'm like, oh no, he's heard this and he's going to call and say, you don't have a source for this. You shouldn't have written. He's going to explode on me. And he calls me and I go, Bannon, I'm right. And at the same time I was finishing the sentence, in other words, he wasn't even waiting for me to speak. He goes, I know you're right. Write another one, double down, and hung up the phone. And that's what I learned from Steve Bannon.
Okay.
Because, see, I thought he was going to call me.
Well, he's got balls.
And I was going to have to be embarrassed in front of everybody and say, I'm sorry,
right.
when I hadn't done anything wrong.
Right.
No, he was calling to say, I got you.
Oh, all right.
You know, and that's kind of, matter of fact, I had something come up a couple weeks ago that I handled it a certain way, and my wife says to me, she goes, see, that's what you learned from Bannon. So, and it was a positive thing.
I've had some stuff happen too. I got chewed out by somebody yesterday, and who'd been on my show, and he's in politics and running for a big office. And we had another guest on afterwards, and we had a discussion about that person, and it was straight up, it was accurate, and it was honest. And they called up and bitched out my staff about it. And I was like, no apologies, we did nothing wrong. And then we sat down and said, let's review and make sure. We went through and looked and said, fuck no, man, this was absolutely dead nuts on.
Right.
If they can't take this, they shouldn't be in this game.
Right.
So I get it. You got to stick your guns, man. When you're right, you're right. And I just don't apologize to smooth people over either.
Well, and that's a tactic of the left. The left can't win the argument, so they want to silence you. And an apology is the first step towards silence.
Right.
It just is. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to give them that first step. Now, if I burp in your face, or, hey, I'm going to be the first guy to apologize.
Sure.
But if what I've done is expose something you were doing or undercut your lie, then sorry about your luck.
It's not arrogance on my part. I do this mostly. This is like therapy for me.
Right.
To talk about my country in a very civil way,
right,
and talk about our problems and what we could do to make things better, and get people who are running. Well, I mean, I had a U.S. congressman yesterday to be able to have people in the halls of power come in and sit down and talk in a long format where you can do a deep dive. I feel like I've got some responsibility. I'm not trying to expose or gotcha anybody, but I have a responsibility. I'm not playing for one side or the other. I'm just trying to find out information and have a dialogue with people. So, if people feel like, oh, that went great, I had a great conversation, Greg's on my side. Well, I'm not really on anybody's side. I'm really on the country's side.
Right.
You may come up in conversation later, and you're going to get some feedback.
Right.
Right. But I'm not playing for one side or the other. I'm really playing for the Constitution in my country.
Right.
And everybody else can fuck right off. I don't really care what anybody thinks.
Well, and that's kind of where we are, though. If you think about it, we've hit a place where, you remember the left when they used to run a presidential candidate, like think of Al Gore, that loser. He would talk about how he was going to defend hunting and he was pro Second Amendment. Now, he was lying.
Oh, yeah.
But see, somewhere between Gore and where we are now, they started running. They were just honest. No, we're going to take away your AR-15. No, we're going to take away this. No, we're going to do a government buyback of that. No, we're going to limit. No, you're going to have a permit to carry a gun blank. And so they went somewhere from having bad intentions but hiding them to having bad intentions and being open about it. And at that point, there's really no option other than to be vocally pro-Constitution, vocally pro-Second Amendment, vocally pro-First Amendment, so on and so forth. Because if you're not vocal now, you're going to miss the boat.
Well, and when they were giving lip service to the Constitution, when they were giving lip service to a plurality of America, it was harder for us to lock and load.
Right.
But as soon as they went full commie or full Marxist on this stuff or full oppressive, we're like, oh, okay, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
Because now I don't need to be nice. Let me just throw a brick at you because I'm verbally. Let me just throw a brick at you. I'm done. Because that's what you think. If that's really what you think, just say it out loud. Let's make sure and make everybody hear it.
Right. And when you were talking about Trump a while ago, I really think that's one of the great things Trump did. I've heard people talk to me. I've had a few people talk to me and they're like, I hate how coarse political dialogue has gotten. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I don't, because
it's more honest.
The left has always been that coarse and we've cowered. And then here comes Trump, and Trump says, no, it's time to get in here. You get in here and you trade shots with them. You don't bend down, you don't kneel, you don't sit quiet. And Trump not only traded shots, he knocked some folks out. And that's it.
I love him.
Yeah.
Like, I love him.
Right.
I have no reason loving a brash New Yorker who is out of line sometimes.
Right.
It's not my style. And I love the guy.
Right.
We've never had power actually speak truth back to us. Not once, ever.
Right.
My friends are all pissed off. I've got friends, well, from the entire political spectrum. I'm sure you've got friends across the spectrum. You wonder how your friends or how you're related to them. And you hear them bitch about the tweets. I go, you're just mad because you're actually hearing a man in the office tell you what's on his mind.
Right.
We've never had a president actually tell us what's on his mind.
Right.
Everything's prepared. Some GW, George Washington University graduate in public policy is putting together a paper for him, and they present it as they read it off. He's just, you could see him. He's working.
Right.
Like, while he's talking, he's kind of working through it with us.
Right.
I love that honesty about him.
Yeah, and I loved it that he was comfortable being himself. That was that honesty. 'Cause you knew you were getting the real,
flawed.
You were getting the real Trump.
Yeah.
And it's the same. If I would go back, it was the same with Reagan. You got the real Reagan, and he was flawed too. And they hated him. They called him the dumb cowboy and this and that. And when I saw the same criticisms being launched at Trump, I'm like, we got something here. We've got the real deal here.
Yeah. I just saw a guy that was to his own self true, and you could tell he loves the country.
Oh yeah.
If you've done well in this country, it's hard not to love it. When you see, liberals who fall into one of the four categories why you're a liberal, I feel guilty. I have so much money, I didn't earn it. So I'm going to be a liberal now and be woke. The Hollywood class has so much money, they should be conservatives.
Right.
It makes no sense at all that they're a bunch of lefties. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Except that they're completely isolated and out of touch.
Yeah.
I mean, which is what we see.
They are now, that's for sure.
They are now, but it just, I'm thinking about what you're saying about Trump though. I loved him every day I woke up, and I'm gonna say it, and hopefully it sounds right. I woke up and I felt safe. Like, I didn't think that every day. I didn't wake up and go, wow, I feel safe. But like, I didn't fear at any level. Russia could say they're going to do whatever they wanted, China, whoever, but they wouldn't.
They wouldn't. Because
Trump was in there, and they knew this guy here. After he smoked that leader in Iran, everybody knew, okay. Okay. It's going to be that way.
I'm telling you, I get giddy thinking about it. So, because I'm talking politics all the time, and I get around and I go to events and talk to folks. I've talked to a lot of women about politics. Now, I don't really know totally what went down with the election. I think there's always chicanery going on. Maybe it was more, maybe it wasn't. Honestly, after a year of talking about it and having the people who were involved in recounts in here, still not totally clear to me. And if I'm not that clear, the general population is not clear.
Right.
So they're like, okay, enough's enough. Let's get on with business. Because unless you got a smoking gun, we're done. In the background, politics are going to do what they're going to do and try and shore up where they see leaks. It seems like the math says white women abandoned Trump. And I'm pissed off at them. And I've been telling women, I'm like, look, you girls, you need to quit thinking like housefrows. And you need to get serious. Do you want your son, your nephew, or your grandson to go to war? When you vote for soft, milquetoast men to run our country, your nephew will go to war in 4 years.
Right.
And, oh no, my nephew won't. There's no draft. He's fucking driving a car home from high school. He'll hit a recruiter's office like I did, join the Marine Corps. Right. Like, you don't know what they're going to do. I call people out all the time. Voting for weakness will send your kids to war, ladies. So open your view up. Get your head up out of 10 feet in front of you.
No, you're right. And historically, you're right. And you look at Vietnam. It started under JFK by sending, our unofficial military personnel over there, and then under LBJ, whose initials are to be SOB, it only escalated until he got us to a point with the Tet Offensive in January 1968, where there was no looking back, and it was evident that we were losing under him. And then a Republican finished the war and got us out, Nixon. But you're exactly right. When these soft folks get in there and they think, well, their idea of a show of force is to throw 5,000 guys around a building or on a border versus 300 or 400 or 500,000 troops who are ready to fight to the death. They think if we do that little show of force, everything will be all right. And what that means is we're going to lose a large portion of those 5,000 troops before they get home. And every troop they send after that in this limited war, we're going to lose at a higher degree than we would if it were total war. And all you have to do is look at total war versus limited war in American history to know that. Anytime we fight where we say, you pull a shotgun, we'll pull a shotgun. Anytime we fight like that,
it's worse.
It's worse. You pull a shotgun, we will nuke you. If we play that way, we win every time, and we won't lose troops. We might lose 2 or 3, but we won't lose many.
Even if we don't say nuke, we say we will crush you. Yeah. It will be the end of
That's
you. And the thing is you got to look across the table and believe a man when he says that.
Right. And then you go back to what Bannon said, and you don't apologize for that statement.
Right.
You don't apologize. You let it sink in. Let them know. No, I mean it.
Like you would think the American political class, you watching as a writer and reporter on what's going on in our country, you would think, even if you don't like Trump, even if you hated Trump and you're a never Trumper who can't see past the fucking nose on your face, you would look at the success, delete the hair, delete the man, and look at the success of policy, process, and approach, and you'd say, okay, we can play his game. We're just going to put our uniform on.
Right.
He played one of power, a little bit of unpredictability, a little bit of Wile E. Coyote, good, and then following through on what you say you're going to do. That's a big thing.
Right.
When foreign leaders, say a leader in the United States, when they see him doing what he says he's going to do, and then he says, don't do that because we will retaliate, they go, oh, he's going to do what he says he's going to do.
Right. Which is how it ought to be. I mean, yeah, it's just amazing under him. But that military deal, I'm thinking still about your point. You see how the reaction to Russia and the Ukraine has been. It's hard to think of greater weakness than we're seeing right now. Oh. And I'm not saying we need to threaten Russia. I'm not talking about threatening, but just show some strength.
I've been saying for a while, I like the chessboard a little bit, and I like studying the people. Putin's interesting because he's been around long enough. We know about him. Why haven't we put the 5th Fleet in play? Why haven't we put the 1st and 2nd MEU in play? Why aren't there people moving? Why aren't we moving parts on the chessboard right now? You move parts on the chessboard and people start going,
right.
You make them think. All you do is make them pause. It's like the ruling class of our country doesn't understand that energy is the pivot on which this world turns.
Right.
So the first thing they do is cancel the Keystone Pipeline, approve a pipeline that we should have never approved, which made Germany connected and independent with Russia. We're approving pipelines over there. We're disapproving them here. We're stopping our own energy here. Raises up the price of oil, funds Russia. Putin has money to fuck with Ukraine.
Right.
This is just one doot. Like you could see this. This is so obvious. If you drive up the price of fuel, you put money in the Russians' pockets.
Right.
And when the Russians have money in their pockets, they do stupid stuff.
Well, and we've got a president, you may have seen him yesterday, who explains inflation by saying inflation is driven by the rising cost of vehicles. How stupid are you? Do you not understand? No, inflation drives the cost of vehicles and everything up, but he doesn't know what's causal. He doesn't know the cause from the result.
They think the vehicle prices are going up because of inflation, and the vehicle prices are going up because there's none available.
Right. I mean, it's just...
they're stupid.
It's the craziest. But you had to go to your point, too. And so I know yesterday I went to a gas station in Arizona, and premium unleaded was $5.09. $5.09. That is Biden's America.
Yeah. What's funny is... Trump, he said some outrageous things, and they had a tendency of coming true. It was almost like the more outrageous it was, you knew he knew that it was it's like he saw it happen. He's like, oh, no, I saw them shoot that guy in the face. He's a killer. That guy's a murderer. Get rid of him. And you're like, who would call somebody a murderer? Well, he saw it happen.
Right.
And over time, these crazy things that he said would just get proven true. One thing after the other.
Right.
It was pretty amazing to watch.
Right.
It's curious. We have a really weird dynamic right now. We've got a feckless non-leader with a little Politburo of lefties around who are younger, and they're not executive types. They haven't had to be responsible for their decisions, and they get to throw him under the bus for all their bullshit they're pulling right now. We have a real president in absentia who's probably going to get elected again. sitting in the wings, making statements about what he's going to do with Russia. It's a freakish dynamic right now.
Right.
I've never seen anything like it.
Right. Well, the thing that makes me nervous, though, is the habit of the guy in the office right now, people that think like him. He's a reactionary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, that's what I loved about Trump and Reagan. They were preemptive.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that preemptive nature is what you said. It's not even military. Part of the preemptive nature is you just do what you said you're going to do, so that when you come around to saying, you do that, we're going to put it on you, then people go, okay, he means what he says with the military too. But what bothers me is where we are right now. Biden is not going to react to China until China takes Taiwan. Then he's going to react.
You want some McAllen?
Yeah. He's not going to react to Russia until Russia takes Ukraine. Instead of getting out in front of it to prevent either of those things from occurring. And
good morning.
I can't figure it out. I mean, I don't know how the left thinks, because what they automatically do is they guarantee that our troops, who I support fully, that our troops will be fighting from a posture of weakness, from a disadvantage. And if we could get out in front of these things, we have an advantage, because we already have the most powerful military. Just let them do their deal.
You know, we saw leftists dealing with ISIS for years, screwing up. We've seen them go through and clear out the general ranks. We've seen a meritocracy kind of guy like Trump show up and express utter dismay at the incompetence of generals. I mean, he did it. He said it out loud. He goes, I remember, this is almost a direct quote. I remember, I used to think generals were like really sharp. They'd be something. They were like the best and the brightest. And now that I've worked with a bunch of them, I just don't think much of them at all.
Right.
It's like, and most of them, they're kind of dumb. They're not really, I'm like, oh my God. Well, when he says that, he's not talking out his ass.
No, he's not wrong either.
He says straight stuff. And I totally agree.
Well, it's just like, think of football. What does NFL mean to you now compared to what NFL meant 4 years ago? Once it gets politicized, it's not the same game. It's not what your grandpa and your dad used to watch, and your uncles, what they used to sit around on Sunday and have their drinks and cheer for. It's not the same thing. Same way with these generals. And I'm not putting a specific general down, but I'm saying the tendency in the military, we saw it in Vietnam, and from then forward, it's continued. It's become a bureaucracy, which is politicized. And the more politicized it gets, the more room there is for a little criticism. And that's what Trump picked up on. These guys aren't pure brass anymore like they used to be, the ones he was talking about. They've become politicized. They're agents of the state, whereas they're supposed to be separate and leaders of the military.
Yeah. I was talking with somebody yesterday, and I said, you name me a fucking career I wouldn't walk away from to do the right thing. There's no star, there's no rank in the military. I'd be like kissing ass and lying to keep the job.
Right.
Like, where is the courage of these fuckers? And I don't know if you remember, they ran that Marine through the ringer a couple years ago it was only a couple years over Afghanistan. He's like, hey, someone should be accountable for this.
All right.
And they ran him out of the military.
Right.
A guy called for accountability.
Last year. Yeah.
For an absolute... He's the only military guy I know that suffered consequences for what happened in Afghanistan.
But the good thing about that? The bad thing about that is we lost 13 military members, which I know you completely agree with. But the good thing about that, it more than anything, and I don't know how long, reassured me that there are more real Americans who think like you think, who think like I think, than we ever dreamed, because Biden lost it all. Biden had a little bit of momentum, and he lost momentum at every level, whether you're talking about foreign policy, whether you're talking about domestic issues, gun control. His opportunity to get gun control was done after Afghanistan, because he lost all support because of those 13 deaths.
Not only that, I mean, they squandered their political capital faster than I've ever seen anybody get rid of their political capital. Okay, so in my neighborhood, up in our neighborhood-ish, there's a couple Biden flags floating around, and we know who they are because we're like keeping an eye on those some bitches, And this guy's got this. He got a nice house. He clearly did well for himself. He's probably a doc or whatever. He's got a Biden flag up, and it's been up. And I'm like, should I do a couple of pops out the window at the house? I'm always like, these like crazy fantasies running through my mind as I'm driving, taking the kids to school in the morning. I'm like, should I pull up in his front yard, leave a little posse traction rip out across the, what should I'm gonna knock that gate down with my bumper one of these days and send him a selfie, standing on his house. And after a couple weeks ago, the flag came down. His Biden flag came down.
Yeah.
And and it's almost like I'm sitting there going, oh, he just got embarrassed for the first time. Right. There's something to be said about letting these ding dongs get in charge. And I wouldn't choose this, but now that they've done it, here's the upside. Everybody gets to see.
Right.
You get to see it in full effect.
Right.
I heard the craziest thing being floated yesterday. It was that with Meyer retiring from the Supreme Court, that Biden was going to put Kamala Harris up for the Supreme Court so that he would get a different VP. Have you heard anything crazy like that?
Well, I've heard that theory. That's probably the most prominent theory. But I don't know. I hate to try to guess because who knows what this man will do. But that probably literally is the most prominent theory you hear.
What's interesting is they've taken one of the hallowed American institutions that was kind of beyond reproach forever. I'm keeping a track for you. I'll get you out on time.
That's not what I'm doing.
All right.
Thank you.
They're turning the Supreme Court into a clown car.
Oh, yeah.
And, the Supreme Court, no matter what anybody says, they go in for life. They can step outside of politics. They can vote their conscience. It's got a stabilizing effect on the madness of politics because they can check things and the executive and the legislative. No, we don't do that. That won't get through the Supreme Court. It's a filter that keeps everybody a little bit. They know mom and dad are watching. But with Sotomayor, whatever her name is, she's dumb as a box of hammers. I am sure she has affirmative action through every goddamn thing she's done, right on in the Supreme Court. And when you hear her talk about issues, she's a moron, and she's on the court.
Right. Well,
and now his filter is, I'm going to put a black woman on, and I have no problem with any black woman at all. But I never will not talk to someone because they're a black woman, and I won't decide to talk to someone because they're a black woman. Right. Let alone the Supreme Court. I'm flabbergasted.
Right. No, I'm with you on that. While you're talking, what I'm thinking about is, you want to talk about Trump and one of his great accomplishments, those three justices.
Unbelievable.
Because no matter what the Democrats do, it's 6-3. No matter who he puts in Breyer's place, it's 6-3. If the Republicans will fight to block it, then we win the Senate in 2022. Maybe it goes from 6-3 to 4-2. I mean, that'd be very difficult. I know that's fantasy land talk, but at least maybe we have it at 6-2 for a while even, so we can win things. Just don't let them put another one on. I play to win politics. I don't believe compromise. If I were in charge of the Senate, if I were McConnell right now, we're in charge of the Republicans, that is, I'd be getting everybody in the room going, guys, we're not giving up on this. We're not going to let this happen. And all they have to do is pull Sinema. If they have all 50 Republicans, and you pull either Sinema or Manchin to your side.
Well,
and Manchin can't risk putting a pro-gun control guy or person on because he has to face West Virginia voters.
Yeah.
In West Virginia, number one of the greatest states in the union as far as natural beauty. Number two, as far as real Americans.
Mm-hmm.
That is a state full of real Americans. Manchin can't go back and face him if he supports someone pro-gun control.
No. There's been a shift as, when we were younger, I don't know, you and I are probably about the same age. When we were younger, I don't know if my grandparents were Democrats.
Right.
And it was because they were pro-working person and they were skeptical when Reagan came around, and then one voted for Reagan and one didn't. And then the second time they both voted for Reagan. It was the old there's a legacy Democrat that's still around who's really a Republican.
Right.
Something's gone on crazy in this state. You live here and you've seen it. I don't know too many people who even say out loud they're a Democrat. That would be like saying you're in the John Birch Society out in Los Angeles. That not something you'd do, right? I don't know anybody who doesn't have guns out here. Even my Democrat friends are like, they have guns, and like, well, you should be able to have guns. But something's gone on. Mayor of Phoenix, Democrat. Mayor of Tucson, Democrat. Mayor of Flagstaff, Democrat.
Right.
Democrat senators. We got a Republican governor who's quiet.
Right.
I don't know what's happened. Something's wrong. And that's why there's so much state madness going on over elections right now, because something doesn't make sense to many of us. Because I don't know too many Democrats. I mean, I know a lot of people. And when you run into people who's... How many Democrat signs do you see up around the state?
Right.
When you drive around? I mean, are they all just in hiding?
Right. I can't think of any place I've seen one. I think I have counted. I've seen 3 Biden bumper stickers. For the most populous landlocked state in the union, 3 Biden bumper stickers, that's not a lot. And so I know that when I first met an individual, I'm not going to say his name, about 2 years ago, I said something and he misheard it and he goes, "Oh, Hawkins is a Democrat." And that was his way of putting me down.
Right.
That's how predominant what you're talking about is. We're so red in our mentality, so Republican. So
that's why I don't get it.
As you talk though, I don't want to get into anything you don't want to get into, but there are certain people running for office right now that I believe if those people can win, the things you're talking about are going to be fixed. And
who are those people that you like for those fixes?
Carrie Lake.
You like Carrie?
I really like her. I've had a lot of time with her.
Okay.
And what I like about her is she's a Trumper. She is going to say some things. And I don't say this in a negative way. I know it sounds weird to say it. She's like a female Trump. And she is going to say some things that are going to hit you wrong. Where you were talking about a while ago, Trump could be a little more whatever this way, or could have curtailed that statement that way. Lake is probably going to do those kinds of things. But the thing is, Blake is also going to be the first person to say, "You come and take it." She's going to be the first person to build the wall. She's going to be the first person to do all these things to be sure parents control education. She's going to destroy school boards as best she can. Just going to make it so difficult for those school boards to operate unless they're operating in a way that honors what parents want. And I don't know, she's a fireball. You know, I'm not saying there aren't other people, but I'm saying I've had a lot of time with her. And I've had time with her in different settings, and I've seen her and I've heard her speak in different settings, and there's a consistency there and a love for America. And I just happen to be a fan, but like I say, there may be other people.
Yeah. Anybody else you see on the state horizon?
Well, I'd see in Tucson, but he's state candidate, but for a federal office, Eli Crane, SEAL Team 3 sniper, and you talking about loving America.
Yeah.
And, you know, he wants to get in there and do, you know, and Eli and our friends, let me say that.
He came in, he did the show. So did Carrie.
Eli and I spoke, and this says more about him than I believe anything I can say. I called him one day. I go, "Eli, I just want to tell you, I love you." And I go, "But when you're on Fox and stuff, sometimes you look angry." And I said, "Now when I just started, like I went on Piers Morgan and different things years ago, when I started making those appearances, I had someone who'd sit down with me and they'd say all kinds of things to me to try to make me frown. And I had to learn to smile through it and control the conversation. And by the way, I destroyed Piers Morgan. I destroyed him. But anyway, I told Eli, I said, "You know, it seems like you, when you're on, you just look so mad and disgruntled." And he just goes, "A-Dub," that's what he calls me. He goes, I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I am mad."
Yeah.
And I go, "Well, I'm just saying, maybe if you smile." And I said, "I'm never going to call you and talk about this again. I just want to say it one time as an observation." He goes, "Well, I appreciate it." He goes, "But I just want to tell you, I am mad. And I hope when people see it, they know I'm serious." And that did more for me than anything he could have said. And I've watched him since that time. And this man, of course, you know, he already loves America. He dropped out of college after 9/11, didn't finish his degree, so he could go be a war fighter and save this nation from those kind of attacks.
Right.
And now here he is ready to save it again in a different way. I'm all for him.
Yeah. You know, one of the things when you start doing stuff on camera, when you start sitting at a desk, when you start being behind a microphone, not everybody's really comfortable with that. And so their buttholes have a tendency to pucker up. They get the butthole puckered up face. I'm pissed off too. And to be able to have a friend to call up, people got to say every now and then, hey man, you need to kind of lighten up. Say what you got to say, but you got to lighten up. You're turning people off. Like, oh yeah, that's right. Like I've had times where I'm so mad. Years ago, I was like, hey, get rid of the TV or we're divorced like tomorrow. Like,
Right.
You got to calm down.
Right.
And I was like, all right. I'm lock and load, ready to shoot the TV.
Right. Well, I want to say about him though. I just want to follow that. Eli's like a brother to me. We hunt together. We go to Texas and hunt. I go down there to Tucson probably once every 3 weeks, and we shoot semi-long range. And the things he can do with a firearm, his knowledge with a long gun, it'll blow your mind. I mean, and his love for our country is next level. So that one phone call was just an observation that I'll never make with him again, because once is enough. Friends make a statement, and that's it. You do it because you're buddies.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you what, I hope he wins, and I hope he wins so big that his victory makes Democrats in New York cry. I mean it. I hope it's that big, because if he and those other 4 SEALs can get into the House,
that's a big deal.
We're going to make some changes.
The SEAL contingent.
Yeah. And so God bless every one of those guys.
Yeah, fantastic. Talk to me about are there any, obviously you've got a career where, very needle on the record with Second Amendment, so to speak. What do you see on the horizon with Second Amendment? I look at it just from my little perspective, and I see the Democrats have basically unknowingly played completely into our hands. Lawlessness and this, all of these prosecutors that were funded by George Soros and the Democrat Party, Nancy Pelosi, their meddling, which has dismantled wonderful cities around this country and made citizens afraid of beautiful American cities. They've almost played right into our hand about having firearms. And I don't hear a lot of get rid of firearms talk going on right now. So give me a little sense of what's your hot topic right now with Second Amendment.
Well, and to say what you said, you hear the left defund the police, but to say what you said, I haven't heard any follow-up talk, defund Smith & Wesson or defund Sig Sauer. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. They've been sold out.
They've been sold out. So I think you're exactly right. And, I just wrote this morning, let's go back to 2020. We had a little over 8 million first-time gun buyers, 2020. And that's when all the hysteria went up.
That's amazing.
That's just first-time gun buyers.
Those are potential conservatives.
That's it.
I love that.
See, and that's it. That's the other thing we got to be honest about. Purchasing a gun is transformative, because all of a sudden, I understand independence.
Self-power.
Yeah. You want a woman to feel empowerment? You get that woman a firearm and work with her and teach her how to use it. You don't work with her because she's dumb, because she's a woman. I'm not saying that, because that's what the left will say I just said. No, what I mean, man or woman, if they get a gun, I always offer, I go, you want to get together and we'll shoot some and I'll show you some, you want to be confident with it.
It changes people.
And it changes them. And so over 8 million in 2020, in 2021, 5.4 million new gun owners. So we're at what? Over 13 million new gun owners. And I wrote on a piece in The Economist last week that other people had missed. And The Economist said, look, this diversity in gun owners is bad for the gun control movement.
Yeah, it is.
They admitted it.
Yeah.
It's bad. And you know why it's bad? Because, as we just said, it's transformative. When someone gets a gun, whether it was their ex-husband bullying them, a boyfriend bullying them, or whether they're frightened for their kids because of the gang down the street, now she's sitting in the house with a Glock 17 with 3 or 4 17-round magazines and some good hollow points, and if they come through the door, she doesn't have to beg anymore. She can put it on her terms real quick.
And it's also, and I like to let people know this, and I always do gun tourism. Whenever people I know internationally come in for business I always like to take them shooting, because it's transformative.
Right.
Because the thing about the founding fathers and this statement, inalienable human rights, these inalienable rights,
right,
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and freedom,
right,
they're inalienable from us unless someone suppressed them our whole life and we don't know.
Right.
But when you shoot a firearm and they get over that little fear and adrenaline that happens in that newness, the empowering thing that happens is self-empowerment.
Right.
And self-empowerment, what is the most important thing about walking through the world? Walking with your chin up, not being afraid.
Right.
That stops most attackers. You don't even need to pull. You don't need to pull a gun if you walk around with your chin up, engaging people. Like, oh, that's not a stray gazelle.
Right.
I'm going to go for a stray gazelle. I'm not going for that one. That one sees me coming.
Right.
There is something about being empowered, and then you start calling bullshit because you're not afraid.
Right.
And when you're not afraid, freedom is an amazing virus.
Right.
It's a virus of I say it's a divine virus.
Right.
It gives you clarity. And like, oh, no, you're not going to do that.
Right.
Why not? Well, because you can't.
Right.
And why not? Well, because you can't.
Right.
I don't need to mind. No, because you can't. You can't do that. That's not your right.
Right.
That's empowering.
Right.
And they do not like that.
Well, you know, something you said, and you've seen this as much as I have with people you've helped, you know, but some of my wife's friends who are thinking about getting a gun or just got a gun, they'll reach out and they'll ask if we can go out and shoot it, and they can, and in a half hour's time, you think of that first picture and how that woman will stand kind of leaning back she's on her heels shooting, which is exactly the wrong way to shoot.
Right.
But you talk to her, you move her, you explain why, you lean into the gun, you push it out, and you do all this. In a half hour's time, you turn around and you look at that same woman. She's leaning forward. She's got that arm out. She got those arms out. She's shooting with confidence. You hear the steel, ding, 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 ding. Who knows where her first shot went?
Right.
But now, literally, if it's an 8-shot mag, she's hitting 8 in a row, no problem. And she's going, I want to buy that gun right there. That's the one I want. And what's happened is that transformation you're talking about and I'm talking about, it happened in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
30 minutes. She went from 30 minutes scared and what's my ex-boyfriend going to do to me to, hey, I need a gun. I'll fix all this.
Everything I hear, purple-haired, heffalump, lesbian, Black Lives Matter, all of these women complaining about is all fear-based.
Right.
And you get them all a day of firearms training, it changes their politics. Now, the ring in the toilet bowl may be still how their brain's fucked up, but that'll sort itself out because you get people free and self-actualized. They start doing the ultimate thing. They start being accountable.
Right.
And they start hold people around. And then they're, what you and I were talking about, they're not reactive anymore. They're proactive.
Right.
So you see someone when they first shoot on their heels, scared, they're in reaction mode. Then you see them a half an hour afterwards, they're on their toes, knees bent, slightly athletic, leaned forward, shoulders down, looking forward. You see them focusing. And that's a metaphor for life that happens. And people who laugh and cast aspersions at Second Amendment, people and gun people clinging to our guns and our Bible and, deplorables. Right. These are folks that are a little more on their toes and they're leaning into life and they're a little more prepared for what's coming and they're not as reactive.
Right. And there were, we added 23, we didn't add, but there were 23 million guns purchased, I think, in 2020. That's an approximation. There were...
I only got a few of them. I only got a couple.
There were 18 to 20 million purchased last year.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, too. The left has also lost there, particularly as what you talked about happened. They criticize the police. They try to disband the police, so we have more gun purchasers, more concealed carriers, constitutional carries now in 21 states. It's on the verge of passing in Ohio, Florida, Nebraska, and Georgia. And so if that happens, we're going to be at 25 states, half the union. And so what's happened is that little group of Second Amendment people they like to make fun of, that little fringe group, it's not fringe anymore.
No, it's getting big.
It hadn't been fringe for a while. No. But now it's evident. And that's to your point, too. That's why the left has played into our hand on this.
They don't like guns, and they don't know why. And I've known why for years.
Right.
They don't like guns because we're free. And when you are... not have a gun locked in a box you haven't taken out in 3 years. When you have guns slightly interwoven into your ethos, your worldview, your culture, you're free. No one can push you around.
Right.
You can think independently. You can't be a sheep. You won't run with the herd. You'll do your own thing.
Right.
You may run with the pack, but when the pack makes the wrong choice, you go, no.
Well, it's to make your point, I say, too, I don't need them because I have a gun.
Right.
That's it.
People say, what's the first thing you do when you hear a bump in the night? I don't call the police. They won't be there in 20 minutes. It'll all be over by then.
Way over. I look down. If my dog's ears are up, I know I might want to grab the pistol that's right by the bed, and then I'll do my walk down the hall with the flashlight, or I'll grab that Mossberg 590M I keep by the bed, and I've got a 15-round mag in it. Counting the one in the hole, that means I've got 16 rounds of 12-gauge love for whoever's in that hallway. And so if the dog's ears are up, we'll get busy. But if they're not up, I go right back to sleep because I don't live in fear. Because I know if in 5 minutes the dog's ears are up, I can handle that.
And then you would hear people from the outside say, well, who wants to live like that? What do you have all these guns in your house for? And what do you mean live like that? All afraid. I'm not afraid at all.
I'm not even almost afraid.
No, not even slightly afraid. I'm like, kind of like, wake me up if there's something interesting, but that's called not being afraid.
But I was thinking when you were talking, see, that's how free people live.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just how they do.
And, as you'll go around in Second Amendment circles for years and years and years, you may never run into one person who's drawn down in the civilian world and shot somebody.
Right.
You might have to be in your position where it's your living and you write about it to run into those folks. But like me, I think in all the people I've talked to, I might have run into one person who's, I ran into somebody who said they shot somebody and I didn't believe it. And they were real famous. And then a couple other people, and they pulled a firearm and it de-escalated things. I don't know if I know anybody who's actually pulled a firearm and shot anybody. I think we had a customer come in. Oh, you remember that dude who was down on the freeway on the way to Tucson? He had a criminal background, had a firearm on him, but he had gotten his rights back, and a cop was being beat up by somebody, and he shot the dude.
Oh, yeah.
We met that guy.
Yeah. He came across as pretty humble to me.
Yes.
But
it's rare to run across people who've actually,
I have a friend who has. He dumped a magazine on somebody, and but for good reason. He pulled in, and the individual was either making his way into his home or coming out of his home. And but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm like you; it is rare, but you know what it goes to though. It goes to that often made statement by whether you Rumsfeld or W. Bush. They would talk about how we have to be right every time, but the terrorist only has to be right once. It's the same way here. I have to be prepared every day, period. All the criminal has to do is catch me at 15 seconds of any given day when I'm not prepared. That's all he's got to do. Right. And so, as you were talking about our founders a while ago, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, the greatest of those being life. I only have one life.
Right.
And they take it. It's not like you can go, okay, we'll try again tomorrow, Hawkins. You get another life. No, it's not a video game. It's gone. So you have to live prepared every day to defend that one greatest possession, and that is your life. And that's why our founders framed the whole of the Bill of Rights around that idea. And that's why the Second Amendment is there. The hinge of the Second Amendment is self-defense, to preserve that right.
Right.
And so, but as you say all that, and I carry a gun every day, everywhere, and I'm not uptight, and I'm not scared, and I'm not paranoid.
That's what they think about us, though.
I'm not worried about anything.
I know. I'm not either. I'm like, absolute. I'm the opposite of worried. Yeah. But everybody, that's one of the first things, people will say to you at a cocktail party. Well, what are you so afraid of walking around with a gun on me? Right. You carry a gun all the time. Right. What are you up to? What's so scared of? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm the opposite of scared.
Yeah. Well, see, what I struggle with, I'm so relaxed that sometimes I fear that people, well, I know they do. I've heard them. They don't take me serious. They think I'm just joking about life. I'm that relaxed. Mm-hmm. But I'm not joking about life. I'm living life, and I'm just relaxed because I know I'm in a place that if something happened right now, if someone came through that door, we can stop it. If someone comes through my bedroom door, we can handle it. So I don't have things I have to worry about.
Right. It allows you to kind of be in the moment.
Right.
It's funny, and I love the hypocrisy of the people who tout all these limitations on us because they're all running around thoroughly healed. Everybody's got a gun around them.
Right.
They're in a bubble made by guns.
Right. But that's what I was saying about those Hollywood people. They live in a bubble.
Right.
Well, they can't go to the Emmys without presidential level controls all around the building.
Right.
They're also scared. They're scared to death. Something's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I had an old dog that died last year, and I told everybody this, and the people that knew that dog knew. But he was a pit mix, and he just happened to be a perfect dog. Being a pit doesn't make you a great dog. I think it's how you're raised and different things. But I'd take that dog into any inner city, take that dog in my handgun and sleep, no problem. Wouldn't even worry about it. And I mean, I'll just give me a blanket and I'll find a good corner and know what's coming, and I wouldn't have any problem. But the people who criticize us, what I've noticed is they don't have that peace of mind.
Oh, no.
They operate from a platform of fear.
That's why they're wearing masks and getting jabs, and they're all afraid to go to the grocery
Scared
store.
to death all the time.
Chicken shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I part of the, you get around long enough, you do the guns, you do this, you do that, you do knives, you do politics, you do writing, we're all on a human journey.
Right.
And part of that self-actualization process, breaking away from our parents, seeing what they skipped that we have to fill in the gaps for as our job as individuating humans. And then how to walk through the life.
Right.
Because we are all walking straight towards our death.
Right.
Every one of us. And I think it's important to know that death comes and kind of embrace it. Because you stop worrying about mass. And I'm not talking about being reckless.
I understand.
You don't sweat the little shit and the shit you can't control. And you remember that life is the most important thing.
Right.
So enjoy it.
Well, that's what I love when they come out and they say, well, the fourth jab won't protect against Omicron. I'm like, well, I'm glad I skipped the first three then. I don't have to worry about it.
Man, I've been right 4 times.
I've been right. I didn't even know it.
Every time you say I'm going to be more right with the 5th jab, I feel even righter.
But see, the only reason I haven't had a vaccination is, unlike those people, I'm not ruled by fear. Like I thought, well, I've had the flu. I've had the flu. I've had pneumonia. Pneumonia can get scary.
Yeah.
But, so why would I fear getting the flu again? The flu under a different name.
And sometimes it's just like the lesser of evils. I fear experimental genetically modified drugs that have been around for over a decade. They were afraid to put in the public. Why? There's only 2 reasons you're afraid. 1, you're not going to make money. 2, there's too much liability.
Right.
And they were going to make money no matter what. So why didn't they put it out 10 years ago? They didn't mention it for swine flu. They didn't mention it for avian bird flu. They didn't mention it for this, that, or the other. What am I more afraid of? Am I more afraid of what I see going on with people who get sick, or an experimental thing? I'm going to choose the lesser of 2 evils. Well, I'm going to go with that. I'm just going to let my natural thing rip it.
Right.
And they say the average person who died's got 4 comorbidities. I only have 1. I'm kind of overweight. That's it. I don't have any other comorbidity. So I just decided, I made a logical, scientific choice.
Right. Right.
It drives people crazy.
The thing is, I don't know. I had a problem a year and a half ago with a blood clot in my left leg.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to thinking then about the people who live by fear. And I thought, wow, this is to your point. You can get all the vaccinations. You can do everything. You can take all the pills. You can avoid all the buttery foods. You can not eat this type of meat, only that. You can do all of that and then sit home at night and not know it, have a blood clot on the inside of your thigh, and you'll die before morning comes.
Yeah.
And so people just have to understand, that's to your point, in one way or another, we're all going to face death. It's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to live the time I have between now and then in fear. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, me neither. And that, for everybody out there who's watching this, I think, we have a lot of, when people say, I carry, the Second Amendment is for self-defense or for hunting. And when I hear people talk about that, I'm always like, listen, the Second Amendment is for stopping the government. That's what it's for. Everything else are subsidiary reasons along the way and rationales. And I'm fine with that. But I like to not go down the rabbit hole. Like when people say hunting, go, not for hunting. Right. They didn't need a law for hunting. Everybody hunted in 1783.
Right. Well, you know someone you would love, and this is going to sound like the most weird off-the-wall statement, but Governor Pete Ricketts of Nebraska. I was with him at SHOT Show. He was there one day, and I was with him, and I interviewed him. And he was in a setting where he was talking to a lot of people at first, and different states were talking about hunting opportunities in their state. And then they talked about, to introduce him, they're talking about hunting opportunities in Nebraska. And he's like, yeah, we got them. But he goes, I want y'all to understand right now, the reason we have guns so we could stop this federal government.
Yep.
And you could tell almost everyone there agreed with him, but you could just
They were uncomfortable.
You get uncomfortable, but I'm sitting there going, "Why are you uncomfortable?" That's just Federalist 46. That's what James Madison wrote. That's it.
Everyone tries to, intellectuals try and divine what the Second Amendment's about. You don't have to.
Right.
There are books and chapters written by the guys who put it there, and everybody who said, no, we're not signing that document until you get that Bill of Rights thing. And they didn't make it the 9th Amendment. It wasn't a 14th.
Right.
It was right up there with, you can pray to God, say the truth, and carry a gun.
That's it.
I mean, that's it. It's right up there with your freedom to choose your God belief.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's just
it's perspective for people who. You know what? I'll tell you something. You must know this as a history student. The left, and so here's what's interesting. If you are educated. I went to college. You went to college, went a little further than I did. If you went to college and you're a conservative, you've been liberal indoctrinated. I got waterboarded in leftism.
right.
Okay? If you're a liberal and you went to college, you didn't get waterboarded in conservatism. You don't know.
Right.
So all of us conservatives who get educated, we know their playbook. They don't know ours.
Right.
So when we talk to them, I don't know if you know this, I find at the professional political level and almost all the way to the bottom grassroots, they're ill-equipped to have a factual discussion about their belief, for which they're willing to throw you in jail.
Right.
And they're so certain they don't have a country's fucking idea about why they believe what they believe.
Right, and you can see that because a lot of them, if you try to have a serious conversation, even the calmest person, they'll get mad.
Right,
and that anger, is just I believe it's a natural response, or it's a natural response to the fact that they have no rational footing to stand on, and it gets them nervous. So they'll start laughing real loud, or they'll get fighting mad, and either one of those is a giveaway. This person, not only do they not understand me, they don't even understand their own worldview.
They're not of substance.
They live on assumptions.
Yes, they're living on what Don Lemon's telling them.
Right.
They know you could tell. They have very strong opinions and no idea why.
Right.
So I always love to ask them their opinions, and then I say, well, tell me how you got there. What do you believe about that? And what you find is they generally don't have more than a couple sentences. Right. And you go, gosh, that's John Stuart Mill's egalitarianism that you're talking about. Right. And they go, they don't know because they haven't read about it.
But what you're doing too, the value of what you're doing can't be overestimated, because you think of the Socratic Method, which is what you're using, where all you're doing in a respectful manner. You ask them questions. I'm not asking them questions to teach them something. I'm asking them questions to admit what they already don't know. They just don't know they don't know it. I want to show that there's a break between their assumptions and what would be their foundation, that the two aren't in harmony, that you can't go from A to B in a linear fashion because there's no connecting dots. They have just absorbed all of this bumper sticker mentality. Mm-hmm. And they're sure it's right, so they're very vocal, but they've never tested it.
They have a facade of belief. And when you have a facade of belief, I can't remember now when I was reading the Ancient Greeks, but it was either Aristotle or Socrates had talked about when you're trying to change a man's mind, you can't bring them to yours. You have to nudge them off of theirs. Mm-hmm. That's very, very different, right? We have a tendency to argue from where we're at. And I like to go right over to where they're at. I go, oh, I know where you're at. Right. I kind of get, oh, I've heard this. I've seen this playbook. I watched the Bears last year.
Right.
And go, well, tell me, what do you think about that? How come that happened? And I like to just calmly. Sometimes I get surprised.
Right.
But not lately, and not much.
Right.
And what you generally find out is, people don't know. It's like people who are trying to really convince you to believe in God or their religion or their church. You start asking them, they don't know much about religion either.
Right.
I'm like, that's faith-based, and that's cool, and we'll just call it faith-based. And, since you don't make decisions with your faith about, like, how I drive my car, you can go ahead and have your faith. There's no problem. But when you start telling me what I can't do in my house on your other faith-based decisions, I go, okay, well, Let's talk about your reason on that. I want to know why you think that. And what you find is they're just empty buckets. And I have the best success nudging people into right. My grandfather used to say, "Oh, Greg, he's just wrong-headed. He's wrong-headed."
Right.
He's from Texas, you know. He'd say, "Oh, he's just wrong-headed."
Wrong-headed, or he's got it ass backwards.
Oh, ass backwards, yeah. And I try to nudge people around in their own bucket because usually they've got a facade of stickers on the outside of their bucket and there's not much inside.
And usually what they don't understand, people, if I'm picking up on what you're saying, if I'm getting the right image, the kind of people you're talking to who, those are people I've met who are usually critical of classic religion like Christianity or something, but they don't understand that their life is a life of faith because science has said, the CDC has said these cloth masks don't work, yet these people are screaming and hollering people for not wearing cloth masks. They're screaming and hollering people for not having the fourth booster, even though the manufacturer of the booster says it won't protect against Omicron. And so what they don't understand is they have a world that's based on a faith.
They have a faith-based life also.
It's a faith-based life. And whatever that is, that pseudoscience that they've adopted, that's not even real science, but they can't wait to tell you or me to follow the science. Well, I am following the science, and I believe that the antibodies that my body produces, I'll be just dandy, you know?
Yeah. And you know what? You and I'd be having a different discussion if 1 in 10 people dropped dead. We'd have been up because our fear level would have been touched differently.
Right.
That's a damn different conversation.
Right.
But when you start saying, 1 in 1,000, and I start going, oh, okay, well, hold on a second. Before we just up in and flip over the entire house of cards here, what's 1 in 1,000 really mean? Right. Let's take a look at that. And then who's it getting? Oh, you got to have 4 comorbidities? Okay, well then, you know what? I'm going to go to work.
You got a 90-year-old with half a lung and three valves in his heart that are messed up, and it killed him. And I hate that because that's somebody's grandpa. I hate that.
Yeah.
But guess what? It doesn't mean it's going to kill me.
Right. It's been a little bit of an interesting wake-up call. And what's crazy is, this is the first time in history where we're all getting to see it everywhere. It's on every channel. And they whooped up the fear.
Right.
Because it would have never come to this if we didn't have all of this bombardment of visual. I'm sure you've been with press people before as a writer. They don't want to take pictures of banal stuff. They want to get the most sensational thing they can, so they get the raise, the promotion, the job, the whatever. That now it's the clicks and the views. So all we're filled with is sensationalism.
Right. So
everybody thinks hospital beds are filled everywhere. The morgues are overflowing. There's mass graves in New York. It's bullshit.
Right. Yeah. Well, a lot of this, in my opinion, this is only my opinion. A lot of this you say whooped up was whooped up in order to undercut Trump's economy because he was unbeatable with that economy.
Right.
Unbeatable.
Right.
Biden can try to take credit all he can for where the Dow is right now. Everybody who watched knows Trump built that up, and he built it by getting out of the way so the American people could do their thing.
Yeah.
Removing regulation, cutting taxes.
Yeah.
And the Democrats, their only way they could beat that was to create this false hysteria and shut the economy down. And in my opinion, that was their great success in 2020. And but
they created so much momentum. It's getting
out.
them. Yeah.
It's played out.
Yeah.
Ask Neil Young.
Oh yeah, no kidding. I don't know where to listen to him anymore.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know he popped up at first. I just went, oh, that's Neil Young. I mean,
yeah. I'm like, who's that old lady? I'm like, who's that angry old lady?
A lady, her hair's brown, her sideburns are gray.
I'm like, isn't that fucker Canadian? Fuck him.
Yeah.
I guess he became an American so he could vote against Trump.
Oh, well, that's great.
You got any big things you're working on right now? You can give us a little peek behind the curtain.
No, I mean, I just write every day. I shoot all I can, kick around on my Instagram. And
what's your Instagram page?
At AWR _Hawkins. And because of the way Instagram works, you have to type the last S in Hawkins before you'll see me. But it's AWR _Hawkins. But Hawkins. I love doing all those things. And, I feel like we're in a good spot right now in that in 2022, which this is, but in November of this year, we take the House or the Senate. We could take both, but I'm not even greedy. If we take one or the other,
We can shut this shit down.
Biden's a lame duck.
He's already a lame duck.
I'm with you, but I mean, he's a official
I know.
lame duck.
Listen, it's funny. People have been pissed off all year, and I was pissed for probably 4 months. And then I started to see the writing on the wall, and I went, oh, okay. All right. We get to see this play out. Hopefully they don't get us into war by then. Now we got Trump on the sidelines saying, when I become president, this will not happen. This will not stand.
45th and 47th.
Oh, my God. I saw that. I was like, yes. I'll tell you, if I were him, I think he's doing the right thing. Don't say until you know the Congress is yours. And now you can come back as president and not have to deal with bullshit impeachment the entire time.
Right.
Let's come in like a baller. And he's going to come in with no reelection on the horizon. And we're going to get to see the second
4
time a
years.
guy turns a country on.
Right.
He just turned the country on with the flip of a switch.
Right. Well, you know, something you made me think about a while ago, and I'm not really leaving where we are, but you were talking about liberals who come out of college versus conservatives who come out of college, and you were contrasting. I think one of the great contrasts right now is that heart transplant patient in Virginia, they won't give him a heart because he's not vaccinated.
Right.
Now, if conservatives were in charge of that situation, he'd get a heart right now because the most important thing
His life.
is life. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness in that order. And so, that's a difference. Ideologues, and leftists are ideologues most often. Ideologues put their ideology before even human life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas we as conservatives go, you know what? This man needs to preserve that life at all costs. Let's get him.
Let's save life and we'll sort it out
Yeah,
later.
we'll sort it out later.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know you've got things to do and you got to go. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come over and spend a few moments with us. I love talking to Americans I love talking to right-minded Americans, and I love talking to smart, wrong-headed Americans.
Right.
I love talking to I love talking to a smart lefty. And because I know how to open my heart and my mind and actually listen, and
Right.
I'm comfortable dialogue, and I don't get afraid by that. But I like having folks come in who are out there having the fight, writing about it. I know you've been recognized for your work on Second Amendment writing and defense, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate what you're doing here and the knives you're making. I mean it. They are absolutely incredible. And the fact that the first thing that they told me is how you source your parts and your metals and your everything from the U.S. And it's just phenomenal to have that pro-U.S. from start to finish. And that's it, I love it. And the beauty, it's everything, though. The beauty, the mentality of the people that I talk to them by mentality, I mean their commitment, their love of the products they're making.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
Well, you could see it when you walk around the place. Lindsay, who gave you the tour, I mean, she's about as right-wing as you get. I mean, she punch a lefty right in the mouth. She's a hardcore right-winger.
Yeah.
And most of the gals in the building are. It's like I've got this group of folks who've kind of glommed on and said, okay, he's a lunatic, and it makes me not seem crazy.
Right. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate the time to be with you.
Well, thanks for being here. All right, guys, that's the show for today. Hope you enjoyed. Check out AWR_Hawkins with an S at Instagram. You'll also see him around on Brietbart News, and I imagine other publications that pick up your stories from time to time, but you can Google him. His stuff pops up. Talking about and defending the Second Amendment and talking about and defending the core thing about being an American, which is life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, the first of which is life and the ability to defend it and protect it. That's everybody's God-given right. I recommend you all go find a liberal, go find a lefty, take them out shooting and let them find their little American self. Because in every one there is a little John Hancock. There's a little Benjamin Franklin. There's a little George Washington. There's a little John Adams and Thomas Jefferson trying to claw their way out and become an American. Go find them and help them find themselves. Greg Medford from The Greg Medford Show. I'm out.